Ever since nod-krai was released, the quests are becoming easier and easier to understand, which is basically what a lot of people wanted from the game. But on the other side, there isn't really much left for interpretation. We are given almost everything we need to know right on the spot, and that's it. So the amount of things to theorize has drastically decreased. Still, there are a few things that have been left hanging for future updates, and you can count them on the fingers of the hand of a character from The Simpsons, and that's what we're gonna talk about today. But first, this is a theory video and leaks are prohibited in the comment section. I will use information available in the game, but my theories and conclusions are not to be considered the official lore of the game, unless I got something right and it's confirmed in a later update of the game itself. Today's video will also be slightly different. I'll use a different method to talk about things, because we will have to talk about what Alice and Nicole told us, so things I've talked about over and over again recently. I'll borrow the Luna-free concept of homework to ask you some uncomfortable but necessary questions that you will have to answer with pure honesty and without preconceptions for yourselves first, and then, if you want, you can post them in the comment section. I want to highlight the fact that you should be doing this for yourselves, not for me to know what you think, because if you were to end up with a different answer from the one you would have expected to give, you can just keep it to yourself. I'm not gonna force you to acknowledge something you don't want to say out loud. Anyway, after the longest intro I've ever done, grab your moon marrow and let's get this video started. Let's start by talking about Alice and Nicole, because we need to talk about them and then what they said about Teyvat. As for Alice, first of all, I'm fully aware that most of you believe she's not from Teyvat because of what she said, but that's not what she meant. Let's hear what she said.
My main reason for coming on this trip to Teyvat was, of course, to have some fun. But I do technically have a job to do as well, namely, maintaining the stability of Teyvat's borders.
Okay, what she actually said is that this specific trip to Teyvat, so the reason why she's here right now, is to have fun and because she has a job to do, that is maintaining Teyvat's border, which in this case forced her to come to Teyvat because the Traveler, Arlecchino and Columbina caused the trilunar syzygy, even though we later found out that it was Dottore who was causing trouble. To make things even clearer, remember the fact that 98% of the people living in Teyvat has no idea that the light and void realms even exist. So when people say Teyvat, what they mean is the human realm. If we add the fact that Alice needs to go back to Teyvat's borders as soon as she can, what she said was, I came from Teyvat's borders to the human realm today in order to have fun and find a solution to the problem I'm having with the border. She's not from beyond Teyvat. I still think she's Eris, aka Arisu from Enkanomiya, but she just has to spend most of her time at its border for reasons we haven't been told yet. We only know that one of her tasks is to clean the messes Rhine-daughter made in the world, but we don't know who gave her that job to begin with. Interestingly though, she can basically do and say whatever she wants because the Heavenly Principles can't tell her what to do, which kinda feels like she's saying that she has leverage against them. It's like she's constantly blackmailing them by saying, either you let me do what I want, or I'll stop working and the world will crumble as a consequence. So the Heavenly Principles may have been the ones who gave her that job. Probably because Asmodee, the Shade of Space, the one who should probably deal with the border, has gone missing. One more thing though deserves to be told about Alice. It's like she knows she's in a video game, there's no fourth wall with her, reason why she adjusted the camera herself, and above all, she knows that we players see the artistic titles that appear when a Harbinger or a Sinner is introduced, so she made one for the Hexen Circle as well, one that is also visible to the people of Teyvat, not just us players. She basically created a UI panel with trigger conditions, which was extremely funny. When it comes to Nicole, Varka, dear, why did you have to interrupt her while she was literally telling us everything we wanted to know? I get that we were in a hurry to save Columbina, but still. Anyway, I have to say I love Nicole's personality. I literally see myself in her because there is a reason why I rewrite the scripts for my videos like 4 times in a row. And that's because, just like her, I just want to talk about everything from the very start to be sure that I'm explaining stuff in detail. And then I need to cut everything to tell you what you actually need and care to hear. Anyway, it seems that the current events that are happening have not been defined by fate yet. We are now writing fate itself with our decisions, which is very interesting because it means that fate hasn't decided everything that will happen in Teyvat, unlike what we've believed so far. Still, what we care about is the fact that Nicole is still an angel, one of the few that haven't turned into a Seelie, and she's also the most powerful one, because unlike Yohualtekutin, she doesn't have a job to do, so she hasn't used up all her powers yet. This freedom of hers should be the result of her placing all she had on the rusted scales we heard about in the Imaginarian Theater, which allowed her to avoid turning into a Seelie but also resulted in her losing the ability to talk. Moving on to what Alice said about Teyvat and its history, she told us that when the Heavenly Principles arrived on Teyvat, the Free Moons and their goddesses originally controlled the laws of the world, so life, death and so on, and we will come back to this later on in the video, but the goddesses decided or vowed never to concentrate these powers in a single entity or body in order to keep the world stable. In the present though, because the Traveler holds the eternal Moon Marrow, Arlecchino the iridescent Moon Marrow that was never even meant to exist inside Teyvat, and Columbina is an actual Moon Goddess, we basically concentrated these 3 powers in one body, that is nod-krai in this case, which can cause trouble to the entire world. But this is also what Dottore is trying to do in order to transcend his fate. He managed to steal the Eternal and Iridescent Moon Marrows, but not the Frost one because Columbina decided to go say hi to Rarer and Thelindis, and we can safely assume that this is how Rarer is coming back in Luna 4. Back to the past, because the Moon Goddesses then did something to offend the Heavenly Principles, they tried to consolidate their powers in one body since the first trilunar syzygy happened in the funerary year, and after War of Funerary Flame, the goddesses lost, or better yet, they were deprived of their reason or rationale to exist in Teyvat. They became obsolete, we could say. So the world began rejecting them as a consequence, which is the reason why Columbina can't regain her strength. Nicole instead told us that the Moon Goddesses had been created by Nibelung, the then ruler of Teyvat. When Nibelung left Teyvat, the Heavenly Principles arrived and they reshaped the entire world down to its foundations, but the Moon Goddesses weren't strong enough to fight them, so they just kept quiet. Because the moon's existence and their function to keep the world operational didn't conflict with the Heavenly Principles' aims, the Moon Goddesses and the Heavenly Principles began a very precarious coexistence that immediately ended when Nibelung finally came back, starting the War of Funerary Flame, so the war between Nibelung and the Heavenly Principles. Now, the 3 goddesses had no idea what to do. One of them, I think the Frost Moon, believed that they should have sided with Nibelung because he created them. Another one, I think the Eternal Moon, said that they should have been neutral because no one knew how it would have ended, especially with Nibelung being completely corrupted by the Abyss, while we don't know what the third one believed. In the end, Nibelung found out that the goddesses weren't completely backing him up, so he imprisoned them, apparently beyond the fake sky, and transformed the moons into weapons to fight the Heavenly Principles. This is why the moons became mechanical constructs, although there is a problem with this, but we'll talk about it in a few seconds. When the goddesses were removed from the equation, the angels that the Heavenly Principles brought to Teyvat took their place. But unlike Salvindagnir and probably Delphi Pytho, which could be Arcadia, the people of Hyperborea never accepted this new order and they refused the angels' help, one of which was Nicole herself. Instead, they kept worshipping the moon goddesses because they had always blessed and protected them from harm. Now, because the moons became weapons, the Heavenly Principles began considering them a threat that needed to be removed, even though we don't know whether they knew the goddesses had nothing to do with it. So did the Heavenly Principles shatter 2 moons and flung the third one beyond the fake sky, and as a consequence, the goddesses lost their reason to exist in Teyvat and they faded away. The problem from before is that if the Frost Moon was sent beyond the fake sky, so it's the moon Columbina wants to go to, then what is this moon we see in the sky? It's not like people need to see a moon, the world would make sense either way, even without one, so why is it there, who put it there, and what's its purpose? Anyway, when the war ended and the world was plunged into chaos, the people were left with no one to help them, since most angels followed Koitar and Suitervoinen, the first angel and the Voyager, so they had been punished for it, losing their shape and powers, becoming sillies as a consequence. Nevertheless, the people of Hyperborea finally managed to make contact with the moons beyond the fake sky, and even though they finally learned that the goddesses had died, they kept worshipping them, believing that a new moon would have eventually been born to keep protecting them just like the 3 goddesses once did. According to Nicole, Columbina's birth was a result of a lingering connection between the Frost Moon, the only one that wasn't shattered, and the world. Columbina is basically the dying wish of the 3 moons, but I don't think that Nicole actually knows the full truth. We actually do, since Luna too. Of all the entities in Teyvat, who do you think would know more about what happened to the moon goddesses? The answer is quite simple, a moon goddess, which means that we desperately need to figure out what the iridescent moon told us. We went along with Columbina's explanation so that the iridescent moon mistook her for the Frost Moon, but if you watched my video about Luna 2, I had some doubts about what she said, and what felt completely off is the fact that she made no mistake. She was actually talking to Columbina, the one she then called Hypo. Here's what I'm pretty sure she meant. During the War of Funerary Flame, the 4th moon, Columbina, or better yet Hyposelenia, suddenly approached them with a courageous plan, potentially against the Heavenly Principles, and the Moon Sisters were puzzled because they had no idea she even existed. Hyposelenia's plan included the destruction of the moons and, as a result, of the goddesses as well, which I believe would have allowed Hyposelenia to acquire their powers inside of her, becoming the one thing that could destroy the world, which also means that she would have had enough power to also defeat the Heavenly Principles. Problem was that although the iridescent goddess perfectly knew what was gonna happen to her, she didn't want to die like that, so she used the abyss to extend her life, which delayed the plan for millennia, more than 6,000 years at least. Hyposelenia was supposed to be kept hidden until the plan was completed, so she is the 4th moon that fell before the 3 known ones, hidden at the bottom of the ocean around nod-krai all this time, and if you haven't noticed, it's what Dottore was about to raise from beneath the water, but she is also the secret the moons had to keep, which eventually led them to intentionally ignore Shukuatl when he went to their moon palaces to ask for help. The existence of a 4th moon also implies something even bigger. Do you remember when we asked Alice if the moon's powers were life, death, and so on? And do you remember when Nicole told us that the moon goddesses basically became obsolete in Teyvat? And do you remember how the Shades, who bear the same powers and are looking for Asmodee, said that they were about to take action in nod-krai? This is all connected. We know that the Heavenly Principles gained possession of the vows that made the world turn, so the powers of the moon goddesses that kept Teyvat operational. So once the goddesses had been removed, those powers were given to the Shades, reason why there was no need for the moon goddesses anymore. The Shades substituted them. Then we can easily associate the iridescent moon with death. The frost moon is probably time, since one of these powers can freeze time, and the eternal moon might be life, because there's no eternity without anyone to live it, which would leave hyposelenia and space, and both the fourth moon and Asmodee coincidentally went missing. Now think about it, the goddesses had been imprisoned, but we also know that they retreated beyond the fake sky, and now Columbina has opened a rift through basically space, the moon gate, and jumped into it. My theory is that the moon gate leads to the place where the moon goddesses had been imprisoned, which means that everything that happened might have been part of the plan Hyposelenia proposed to the three sisters, but since it took ages for it to happen, and probably because Hyposelenia was born, or reborn at this point, as Columbina in Teyvat in a different way since the Hyperborean couldn't proceed with the Sacred Air project anymore, she lost the memories of her past self, so she's unknowingly doing what she was meant to do. She was meant to go through the moon gate in order to acquire the powers of the other three goddesses that disintegrated when the moons were destroyed. We could say that she was probably meant to go through what Rarer experienced. She had to be fragmented in order to then reconstruct herself with both her own and the three sisters' fragments, condensing all their powers into one body in order to defeat the Heavenly Principles. Now, since the video is about to end, let's do a necessary recap of what we know for certain about Teyvat, including what Alice and Nicole told us. Nibelung was born alongside the planet. Nibelung created the moons and the moon goddesses. Nibelung left Teyvat. The Heavenly Principles arrived on Teyvat, they coexisted with the moon goddesses, and they reshaped the world. Nibelung came back to Teyvat, corrupted by the Abyss. Nibelung began fighting against the Heavenly Principles. Nibelung imprisoned the moon goddesses and turned the moons into weapons. The Heavenly Principles destroyed two moons and sent them, together with the still intact one, beyond the fake sky. Nibelung died fighting the Heavenly Principles. These are irrefutable facts in chronological order that we have at our disposal. The only other fact we know is that Xuquatl went to the moons to ask for help, and that happened after Nibelung left, but probably also after the Heavenly Principles arrived. Otherwise, who was he even fighting against, right? Now, with this chronology in mind, I'm giving you some homework to do. As I said at the beginning of the video, answer them for yourselves with honesty and without preconceptions, which means that you need to use logic to answer, not theories. Question 1. Considering that many believe that Nibelung is the Primordial One because he is defined as the primeval creator and because we now know he created the moons, if Nibelung was born alongside the planet and the Primordial One arrived on the planet of the dragons with the Eternal Throne, can Nibelung be the Primordial One? Question 2. Considering that many people believe that the Primordial One and the Heavenly Principles are the same entity, and considering that the dragons were trying to create a new race using primal fire and humans, a project they had to give up on because of the arrival of the Heavenly Principles, if the Primordial One created the humans, can the Primordial One be the Heavenly Principles? Question 3. Considering that in Before Sun and Moon, the funerary year represents the arrival of the second Who Came and its fight against the Primordial One, while in Luna 3 we learn that the War of Funerary Flame represents the battle between Nibelung and the Heavenly Principles, who is the second Who Came, the second Throne of the Heavens? If you answered Nibelung, then there's a bonus question, let's say question 3b. Considering that Nibelung left before the arrival of the Heavenly Principles, which in this specific case must be the Primordial One, and considering that we know that Nibelung is a dragon, then how come there were 7 dragon sovereigns on the planet? Question 4, and this is the last one. If Alice, Nicole, Kukulkan, the Traveler, and Arlecchino clearly remember and mention Nibelung's name, Why is he defined as the now nameless ruler that used to rule over all? For this question, remember both that Nibelung already came back to life during the Archon War, but also that Alice told us that names anchor one's entire existence, which means that not having or losing one's name most likely has actual consequences in Teyvat. For example, no one knows, or maybe can know, the Traveler's real name except for the Abyss sibling, something the Traveler clearly doesn't understand, and this could be how Asmodee took away the Traveler's original powers. This is my assignment for you. I do hope you'll share your results in the comment section, because I am curious, I won't deny that, and if you do, I can't wait to discuss your answers with you. Oh, and don't worry, I won't be giving grades. I mean, we're not a school, so relax. To conclude the video, let's quickly analyze the theory according to which the Primordial One and the Heavenly Principles are the same entity, which I believe goes like this. Nibelung rules over Teyvat. Nibelung leaves Teyvat. The Eternal Throne and Ark arrives. The Primordial One / River from Beyond the Sky / Heavenly Principles comes out of the Ark, creates the Shades, fights the 7 dragons, takes over Teyvat, and envelops it into Thanos' eggshell, which should be the fake sky, although we were told that the angels wove a veil for the great ruler of the firmament, so I think there are 2 layers, first the fake sky and then the eggshell, and between the two there's that weird red sky we saw multiple times. Nibelung comes back corrupted by the Abyss, and this is the funerary year, and then he fights the Heavenly Principles, which is the War of Funerary Flame. Now, although this theory could make sense, I found some inconsistencies. First, when the Voyager met Nibelung for the first time, the moons had already been created because she saw how different they looked when she came back to Teyvat. Considering that Nibelung refused to leave with the Voyager even though he was most likely in love with her, and considering that Nibelung created the moons to watch over Teyvat because he was about to leave, why didn't he leave with the Voyager but then left anyway? I mean, the Heavenly Principles hadn't arrived yet, so he wasn't looking for a power to defeat them. If he left to find a way to save his people from the imminent destruction the Voyager predicted for Teyvat, it would have made more sense to live with her since she's from a more advanced civilization, and she could have helped him find a solution. Then, as before, why were there 7 dragons if Nibelung had already left? Are they now 8 dragons for some reason? They never used this number, so it kinda clashes with everything so far. It's always either 3, 4, or 7. Also, why would the dragons use the Abyss to fight the Heavenly Principles if their king, clearly the most powerful among them, couldn't even wield it without being corrupted? As before, there's the problem of the humans existing before the Heavenly Principles' arrival, which is very weird, but my 2 last doubts are about them. If the Heavenly Principles created the humans, which means there has always been one kind of humanity, then what is the primordial human that went extinct and that Daughter is desperately trying to recreate? And above all, why wasn't Kanomiya left underground when the war was over? Even if we think that the Heavenly Principles were asleep to heal themselves, Astaroth knew where they were, but she left them down there, and then, before the Archon War, the Heavenly Principles woke up to create the Gnosis, and it was during the Archon War that the seal on Kanomiya weakened, allowing them to leap to the surface. Then why did the Heavenly Principles decide to sentence them to death instead of saving them? I mean, the Heavenly Principles are trying to hide the true history of Teyvat to make people believe they're from Teyvat and not from somewhere else, but they also let the dragons roam the world and they did nothing when Nibelung came back to life, which happened, again, during the Archon War when the Heavenly Principles awoke. So yeah, this might explain to you why I think there's something missing about this theory, but worry not. We will have our answers very soon. I mean, we will either be told the truth during the main quest, or we can just wait for Nicole's release, because her character stories are going to give us everything we need. And that's it, I hope you liked the video. If you did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up, and if you're interested in Genshin Impact Theory videos, consider subscribing. As of the time I wrote this script, I'm still at the second chapter of Jurin's story, and I can already tell that my next video is gonna be about it, because I'm loving it so much. Also, if you want to see me struggle with coding since I'm making my own video game, be sure to check my community posts so you'll be able to witness my slow descent into madness and despair. Well then, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, over and out.